Hello, I'm Frank Shines, and I'm the lead author on the new upcoming book, AI or Die. In this book, we ask the question, can your caveman brain understand AI? We think it can. But to paraphrase Albert Einstein, who once said that everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler, we've taken AI and distilled it down to its essence using, using visuals, not lots of symbols and mathematical formulas. Let's take a minute and walk you through the upcoming book, AI or Die. AI or Die, the caveman's visual guide to AI for everyone. In the world of Chat GPT, AI is the new electricity. And that electricity today is not powered by large smokestack industries of energy, although that's an important component, as we'll see later, but rather these large data centers, these supercomputer clusters that now drive these large artificial intelligence, large language models, and indeed foundation models because they're not just language anymore, they're multimodal. Text, images, audio, video, you name it, right? The world is changing and it's happening fast. The three components of artificial intelligence are essentially compute power, lots of data, and the energy to drive it all. And that's why the computer systems of clusters of GPUs are critical. But those AI algorithms, those models, combined with the energy to drive it all, are critical. And so when we think about artificial intelligence, we've demystified it. And it need not be confusing, as we can see by this caveman staring at the screen. In fact, you use AI every day, whether it's your recommended songs on your Spotify page, or perhaps when you're using Google Maps on an iPhone or an Android phone. And increasingly, Google has embedded artificial intelligence in its products, whether Gmail, or in this particular case, you can see part of one chapter of the book on the new era of leadership in AI. And you can see some of the key artificial intelligence leads like NVIDIA CEO, Microsoft CEO, Sam Altman of OpenAI, and of course, Mark Benioff of Salesforce. And below this, you can see this blue image, this dialog box, which says, help me write. So it has embedded artificial intelligence into Google Docs so that anyone can get help or assistance if they draw a blank or need to improve a sentence that they've written. Well, I'm Frank Shines. My nickname is Brio because I spent a lot of time living in Brazil, and I'm currently working with a Brazilian composer and other musicians and other individuals on a project that we'll talk about a little bit later because it's included in the book. But I spent time in the Air Force, and the guy to my left here in the cockpit is General David Stilwell, a former fighter pilot. Now, for me, I had to leave the cockpit early because of degenerated spine issue that was associated with my mother's side of the family. But I still get a chance every once in a while, thanks to the generosity of Dave here, to get out and fly around Colorado Springs whenever I come through town. And it's a joy. After leaving the Air Force, I went to work for IBM and Ernst & Young, traveling around the world, helping large organizations, mostly the Global 2000, Fortune 500 types of clients, but also tech startups. And I've done a tech startup myself and made a few million, took that money and moved out from San Francisco when I was working with IBM out to Tampa, Florida, where I've been living ever since. In addition to that, we'll talk about how not only can artificial intelligence improve productivity as we understand often happens with IBM and Ernst & Young and other types of McKinsey consultants coming in, trying to drive efficiency and results, but also creativity is a key part. And we'll refer to some of the music and film production, as well as cartoon work that's being done using artificial intelligence for some of our clients that we're working with. So here's a quick overview, just visual to give you a sense of things. In the upper left, you can see the T-41, the first plane that we learned to fly there at the Air Force Academy. And you can see Colorado Springs, Pikes Peak in the background. After that, got a chance to travel around the world working with IBM and Ernst & Young in places like London and the UK, where I worked for about a year and a half on a couple of major projects. Then came back to the States, living in San Francisco, and continued work like what you can see in the lower left, working with all sorts of engineers, whether they're biomedical engineers, um, tech engineers, manufacturing engineers, software coding folks, as well as production and subject matter experts in just about every industry, such as energy, aerospace and defense, and healthcare. So what we've done in the book is we've taken a lot of those experiences over the last 25 years and also looked at what's happening in the future as we're working currently with clients. So one of the big interesting things that we see occurring is working with a lot of my interns. They're now beginning to use dual screens. And my daughter, who is learning all these new types of biology and mathematics that she's never been exposed to before in her high school, is using ChatGPT and other artificial intelligence to assist her. But what you're also beginning to see is not only can this assist in terms of training and education on an individual and personalized basis for students, but also dual screens are becoming a critical part of the future, because what is now ready to happen is you will have an AI agent perhaps working on the left side of the screen here, and you're orchestrating maybe multiple agents that are working on your behalf. And then on your own screen and your own computer, you'll be doing your own work. So this is going to be a really dramatic change in terms of the labor workforce and how things work. In another case, you can see the upper right, we're working with a client here. This is Sably Products, a Miami-based vegan hair products company. And we've used data similar to what you see here to understand her sales. It's using a bunch of little dots here. And these dots represent, in this particular case, we're looking at temperature versus sales. And as the temperature increases, obviously the number of gloves purchased or glove sales drops. And of course, as the temperature gets lower, then we can see more and more purchase of sales, nearly 3.2 billion here in the US on an annualized basis. The work we're doing with Sably is a very similar type of thing. This particular group of dots represents an algorithm called a linear regression algorithm. And we're using that same type of idea and algorithms and technology with AI to predict her sales. In the lower left, you can see examples of the creativity I was talking about before, where I lived in San Francisco and was also raised and born in Silicon Valley, the great San Francisco Bay Area. So you can see some artistic work done there, an example of a humanoid robot with a baby, and the first draft of some of the work we did with the book, with the caveman on the far left. And you can project and come up with new designs of creative types of images that maybe no one's ever seen before, but you can also go backwards in time, like I've done here. You can see my uncle Jack Stroud, who was part of the NASA group that was responsible for safely returning our astronauts from the moon back to Earth. He was part of a 12-person team that was Rockwell International, working under NASA as a contractor, and he also worked on the Minuteman missile. But this is an example where we're able to use the AI to restore these images that were really poorly, well, they needed restoration, and they were poor looking images in the past, but AI helped us to restore some of these images. And of course, where I first got my exposure to artificial intelligence was just prior to starting my work at Williams Air Force Base and beginning my pilot slot there in Arizona. I was asked to work with a group of scientists, and they were working on what's then called, back then was called expert systems. It was the old AI where they thought they could use enough rules, if then statements and so forth, and achieve artificial intelligence. So I worked with them on the cockpit of the future. They would put these devices on my head, these probes and so forth, and track my vision. And as part of that effort, they did eye tracking, voice communication with AI, and a lot of the work around head-up displays with regards to how easy is it to access and see things and reach things in your cockpit. So this was a really interesting project over 90 days that I worked on. But in this particular case, you can see the F-35, more advanced fighter plane, and all the artificial intelligence that's being used here. In the book, we don't use these formulas. You can see we've crossed out the formula for the normal distribution, which can get confusing. Most people understand it as a bell-shaped curve. So rather than going into a lot of mathematical formulas and symbols and confusing concepts, we try to use a lot of imagery as you're seeing here. In this particular case, you can see that there's a lot of apples that are average size that make up the very middle. And then you have a few apples that are very small and a few apples that are very large. And this phenomena throughout nature, you see recur over and over again, and that's what creates this normal curve. And this normal curve is the foundation of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence, you can see, is the big umbrella. Anything that mimics human beings. Machine learning is a subset of that. Think of that as the child. And then deep learning is the grandchild, a subset of machine learning. Artificial intelligence are different machines, such as computers, that can mimic human intelligence. Machine learning uses lots of data to make predictions. And then deep learning, particularly artificial intelligence that we're involved with now with ChatGPT, is generative. So essentially, we have these three phases. First is predictive intelligence based upon machine learning and tools of the past. More recently, with deep learning and GPTs, generative pre-trained transformers, we have ChatGPT, we have Claude, we have Gemini. And with those types of tools, as well as Midjourney and others, with those types of new AI, deep learning AI, we're able to generate things. So we have predictive phase one, generative phase two, and what's coming next is what we believe to be agentic active. Agentic meaning they're working like AI agents on your computers. Active meaning they're going to interact with the real world like robots as well. And in this particular case, you can see two different types of artificial intelligence: supervised learning depicted by a teacher with the student, and then another type of intelligence where the AI goes out and explores things like you see on the far left and finds patterns. So when we think about AI, if the caveman can look in the sky and ultimately see Orion's constellation, or look at the ground and notice patterns in the mud that represent a deer's footprints, they're able to survive, navigate, and find food by identifying patterns. And if the caveman can identify patterns, we can certainly use graphs to understand artificial intelligence. And that's really the essence of everything we've done in the book. Kept it graphical, used lots of examples, case studies, and analogies to make it very accessible for anyone that's not a techie. For example, we show individuals how to think about properly doing prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is essentially entering text into the chatbot. And with that text, you can get the chatbot to give you responses to large language models like ChatGPT. Well, it's turned out that a best practice is not just to give it a quick, simple example like write about dogs, but rather be more specific, break it down, and show examples. And when you do that, you get much better results. So best practices of all sorts we talk about in the book, as well as how much money can be made from non-technical as well as technical jobs in artificial intelligence. And generally, they're in the $120,000 to $300,000 range. In this particular case, on the far right, we're looking at the example of Safely Products customers. And these dots represent over thousands of different clients, customers over multiple years. And with this information, we can identify three clusters. So remember earlier we talked about that explorer that just goes out and finds patterns on their own without being told what to do by a teacher, right? That's supervised versus unsupervised learning. Well, this is a perfect example of unsupervised. We can see here they're unnamed clusters. We just put the data in, and we had the algorithm go through and identify a central point, and in this particular case, three different groupings from the central point that represented a customer profile. So you can see the lower red X represents all these orange customer profile segments. You can see what one step above that in yellow, that customer grouping, and then a grouping above that. The very top grouping in red represents those individuals who don't tend to do a lot of purchases over, say, 20 or 40 times, but rather will pay about $175 to over $350 even for a single order. On the other hand, we see on the lower end customers that tend to want to purchase maybe $75, $80 per order, average order size. And they represent the largest group. And we can see that they represent individuals that will purchase 20, 30, even 50 times. Okay. So this is really important in terms of segmenting your market, creating a customer profile, and then targeting that market based upon the customer profile with the proper types of marketing campaigns, advertising, search engine optimization for organic traffic, social media, and so forth. Otherwise, it's possible to spend a lot of money going after customers that will never purchase your product or not repurchase the product, in which case you're spending a lot of time churning through customers and trying to find new customers, which drives up your overall marketing spend. So these are ways that we can use artificial intelligence to identify those opportunities. We'll show you a few last ones here. What makes a video go viral? What I did here is I took screenshots of hundreds of these, fed it to the algorithm. In this case, I used Claude as opposed to ChatGPT, Anthropic Claude, because they tended to do a little better job on certain types of mathematical things, and it can take images and information and convert it into React code or Python code in order to use that to better improve the way it understands graphical images or information, and therefore could do a better job. So in this particular case, it was able to look at the text, look at the colors, look at how long the video was, how many views, how long ago it was recorded, who was the brand. Bloomberg Originals, for example, here are Big Think. In another particular case, or NVIDIA, who are those different sponsors of the video. And with that information, it really provided some really intriguing insights in terms of what makes videos go viral. So for no other reason, check out the book for that. On the far right, you can see other creative examples. For a corporate client, this is how I use Midjourney to come up with a certain brand, color, image, and style for some work that we did for them. And then one of the most interesting projects we've been working on is one with a company called Bokobo Kids out of Spain, the Netherlands, and Africa, where we're bringing back these ancient wisdom stories from Africa and bringing those into the context of coloring books for children. So you can see how artificial intelligence on the left side help us take other branded images that we work with artists to create similar types of images moving forward. AI will reshape our brains. Now that's quite a provocation. Here's the basic concept. The basic concept is many of us are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Your basic needs like food and shelter, and then you move up to social needs and ultimately to self-actualization. Well, the same thing can be said about the way our brains work. And this is part of the tri-brain theory, but it makes a lot of sense, right? It's something I thought about long before I understood the way this theory had been developed. But let me run it past you. Imagine when we were nomads and we're just basically trying to survive as cavemen. The crocodile brain identifies patterns like how to navigate, how to identify danger or food with the footprints just to survive. Basic survival instinct, fight or flight. But over time, We came out of the caves. We began to understand agriculture by understanding these different patterns, which brought us to the next level. And now we're close to a lot of other people in a community, a farming community, a village that begins to get larger and larger. So social cues and emotions become more important because many people working together can collaborate, can cooperate, and you can achieve things that you could never achieve as an individual or a small group of a nomad tribe. Then what happened? We, of course, moved beyond agriculture into industrial era, and we can see that more planning, rational thinking, the neocortex comes into play. So one begins to wonder, given the research that shows that Gen Z individuals are accustomed to fast-paced learning, they swipe frequently, like my daughter, 15 years old, Rachel, or perhaps they're looking at a bunch of um, TikTok videos, right? Just quickly looking at TikTok videos. Everything happens very quickly. But that may create some problems moving forward in terms of the ability of individuals in the future to focus more and maintain a sustained focus on things. So already we can clearly see that it is having an impact. The new social media is having an impact on Gen Z individuals. AI is going to take a lot of those things and put it on steroids. And if we're not careful and maintain what's uniquely human and take AI and use it in the proper manner that it augments and supports us, then it's possible that we could find ourselves in some trouble, and that can create a lot of different dangers. Anything from obviously individuals who get access to this type of technology and they can persuade others to do the wrong thing, use it for biological weapons or other types of nefarious efforts. And of course, we all know about basic ethics and bias. We speak about that in the book as well. Okay, that brings us to the end. I'm reminded of one of my great mentors and one of the motivational speakers in the US that passed away some years ago, Jim Rohn. And he would often remind us that there were two great orators of antiquity. First was Demosthenes, and second was Cicero. Demosthenes was from ancient Greece, Athens. And when he spoke, everybody said, wow, what a great speech. It was an inspirational rhetoric. On the other hand, Cicero, when he spoke, everybody said, let's march, persuasive action. We're calling upon all of you to take charge of your life. The world's going to change dramatically over the next 2 to 3 years. And the individuals who are the early adopters of artificial intelligence within their communities, within their families, within their workplaces will be those who seize the opportunities in a way that others will have a very difficult time catching up with you, right? When I was working in technology, I got involved with enterprise systems, got involved with mobile and the cloud, was one of the first to use a lot of these technologies. And those lessons I learned in those early days have been priceless in terms of the next 25 years of my career. So take a look at a free download of a 70-page excerpt of the book, AI or Die, the Caveman's Visual Guide to AI for Everyone.